so that's set up. Did you click the live on?
No. You ready?
Yes. Click out of there.
Yeah, I don't know how to.
Oop. Click next.
Okay.
All right, cool. Hey, everybody. We're doing a live today. Today's going to be a fun one because I got all my microgreens to the left of me here all ready to go. So I'm going to show everybody how to do microgreens at your house. So if you don't have a lot of space, you don't have a big garden, you can still grow microgreens and grow a ton of food. So that's kind of the plan today. But before we get into that and before we start talking about microgreens, I wanted to kind of run everybody through my week, what I did this week, what kind of stuff I got in the ground, what sort of stuff I set up, and then we'll start doing the microgreens. And then at the end, I'll answer questions again, just like I did the last couple weeks. So kind of a busy week this week. Me and Ashley, we're on the liver cleanse, and we're on what, day 6? 5. I wish it was day 6. But yeah, day 5, it's going well for us so far. What we've been trying to do is we've been trying to do the liver cleanse once a month. And we started it back in February, Ashley? March? So this is our third one. So the goal is to do one
For this year.
a month and then just see how long it goes for. But I will say it gets easier every single time you do the liver cleanse. Ashley's having a little bit of a rough time this go round, but I find it to be a lot easier. And we decided to take it easy on the liver cleanse with making all the different meals and just make it simple. So every night we've been having spinach soup, and that's been our...
Yesterday, tonight, I'm having her.
Yeah, Ashley got sick of spinach soup, so the last couple nights she's been doing salads, but I've been sticking to the spinach soup. It's easy to get down, and when you're editing videos and stuff like that, it's easy to just drink it as you're doing stuff. But yeah, so we've been up to that this week, and then in the garden we've been doing a lot. Still flipping beds over at our other plot, getting that ready for plants to go in. I pretty much planted everything over there. There's this little tiny raised planter box that I got to put some stuff in. And then we are pretty much at a point here at the main plot where we've done everything. So we've gotten everything we need to get in the ground, and stuff is growing and it's looking good. And we've been setting up irrigation. So that's been a task for the week. We typically use 2 different types of irrigation. There's, of course, drip and overhead. Those are like the 2 main ones you see a lot of farms use. We use overhead wobblers. They're these little, let's see if I have some over here I can show you. Yeah, so we're using these little wobblers. This is a high angle wobbler, meaning when the water comes out of it, it's going to disperse it at a high angle. And this is a mini wobbler, and when the water comes out of this, it goes more at a lower angle. So depending on where I'm planting, I'll use one of these or the other. And those have been working great so far. We've never really had irrigation here in the past, so it's helped us out with spending 2 hours watering all the plants, even though it's it's a healing thing. Even though it's a healing thing, it's still something that is kind of a hassle when you're trying to do other things. So yeah, we set up some overhead irrigation this week. We set up our we did a bunch of planters on top of a shelf, and I set up 1/4 inch line going to each planter box. So it's like grow pot irrigation. So each pot has its own irrigation. That way we don't have to water it. And I'll do videos on this stuff. I filmed it and stuff. So you'll get some videos down the road on it. But yeah, so we set up a lot of irrigation this week. We got some arugula in the beds, direct seeded that. I think if you guys are on Instagram and you're seeing our Instagram, we've been sharing a lot of this stuff on our stories. I started trellising up all of my tomatoes. My tomatoes went in like April, so they're like yay high already. They were on their second fruit set. So they're at the point right now where I've got to trellis them up a little rope up to the top part of the shelf. And I'll do a video on that too. But yeah, so been kind of a busy week. And we've been craving some microgreens. I haven't done microgreens in quite some time. The story with that is me and Ashley, when we farmed up in the Pacific Northwest, almost up near Oregon, 2 years ago. And then we came back to the city, and then Ashley got pregnant, and that kind of sparked this whole, well, let's sell the house and let's figure out our next move. Let's figure out where we want to be long term. So still up in the works, figuring out where we're going to go next. But we started doing microgreens because we had very limited amount of space here in the city. Nothing like what we had up there. We had 211 acres to work with. A lot of it was like dense forest, but it's family property up there. So yeah, so when we came back here, Ashley got pregnant. We had to figure out a means of income while we were here, and we started selling microgreens. And believe it or not, the microgreen business was more successful than the farm that we had when we were up there farming. I think a big part of it is us being so close to the city. In the city, you typically can charge more per container for microgreens than, say, in the country where people don't have a high income like they do in the city. So I think that helped. But we started out just selling to two local farmers markets in the area. And that eventually expanded to getting in about 9 grocery stores. And we would bring living trays to the farmers market. So we'd have a tray, 10-20 tray like this, and then we'd have all our microgreens growing on the tray, and then we'd put them all in my truck, and then we would take those to the farmers market, set them on a table like this, and then we would cut them right there in front of everybody so they could see how fresh it was. But it was also a lot easier for us because we didn't have to cut things the night before. We could just cut it right there in front of someone. So yeah, that was the start of our microgreen business, was just doing these farmers markets. And before we knew it, we had a pretty big following of people that would come back every week and buy more and more microgreens. So we knew the farmers markets were a good place. And then we started doing urban farming. So we had the house that we're selling right now, and then the house here. And we planted stuff in every little nook and cranny we could find. And we would take that to the market and sell that as well. So before we knew it, it was a pretty successful business. We were selling at the farmers market. We were in all these grocery stores. And then came the time we had to sell our house. So got the house on the market, pulled everything out of there, put it in a storage unit, and tried to grow stuff here. That's why you see these shelves back here, and just didn't work. outdoors, there was a lot of, we were dealing with a lot of rats at this plot. So the rats.
We were growing them in the garage.
Yeah, the other place we were growing them in the garage with grow lights. Sorry, I'm talking to Ashley over here. So at the other place, we were in the garage. We had grow lights, we had fans, we had a dehumidifier, so we could really control the environment. Where we tried to grow them outside, they were successful, but then the mice and the rat kept getting to them. Now we don't have that problem. We've taken care of it, but we've also set up a little area inside here where we have some grow lights and some fans and a dehumidifier. And so we're growing a small batch here, more for personal use. But now that everything is out of the greenhouse here, I'm going to start growing them back in the greenhouse again and try to develop another market for that. So, yeah, so that's where we are today. We haven't really been growing microgreens like we did in the past. We've been more focused on stuff in the ground, stuff outside, which has been great because we had those connections with the grocery stores. So we're selling all this stuff to the grocery stores still and making a good amount of money doing it. So today, though, what I wanted to show you is I've got some microgreens in front of me here. So I've got some peas, I've got some sunflower, and I've got some fenugreek. And I've got 2 of each. So I figured it would be a good opportunity to just show you guys how to grow microgreens and my whole process that I was using when we had the microgreen business going. So we'll start with the peas. So peas here, typically what I do with the seed, I get my seed from this company called Mums Seed. You can also buy them at True Leaf. But see, I was buying in bulk, so I would buy these big bags of it. So it was cheaper for me to buy it at a wholesale price through Mums than buying it through True Leaf, where True Leaf, you couldn't buy in bulk like you could at Mums. So we get a lot of our seed at Mums. This is peas, and with peas, what I do is I soak it. I soak the peas for 6 hours. And this will allow the pea seed to soften up. So when it goes in the dirt, it'll have more of a chance to sprout and turn into microgreens. So peas I soak for 6 hours. You don't have to soak it in a mason jar. This is just how we've been doing it. Wide mouth mason jar. Just fill it up with water and let it sit. Let it sit in a dark place too. Next one is sunflower. So sunflower, I also soak these seeds. I try to soak the sunflower seeds for about 3 hours is kind of the goal, 3 to 4 hours. With sunflower, you're going to want to soak them once, get all the dirt off the seed, and then soak them again, and then put them in your final container. And you'll notice that after you soak them once, this bottom will just be really dirty, and that's how you know you're getting the dirt off. So sunflower. And then the other one is fenugreek. And fenugreek, I actually put the seed on dry so I don't soak the seed. Although when we were up north at the property, I did soak fenugreek seed, but now with my process, there's no need to soak it. So these are just like the 3 that we're eating a lot of right now. So that's why I'm doing them. But we grew all sorts of microgreens. We grew broccoli, we grew chives, we grew kohlrabi, we grew cilantro. What other ones, Ashley? Mug bean was another one we grew. But yeah, these are the ones that we're going to do today. So I'm going to walk you through them, and I'll explain the process as I go along. We even grew wasabi. It's in the arugula family, but it's in the mustard family, but it is super strong. It's got that wasabi taste. All right. So here's my 10-20 tray. This is what I grow in. Now you have to grow in something like that. You can buy trays like this. You know, these are smaller trays. If you don't think you're going to eat a full 1020 tray, you don't need to use a full 1020 tray. You could use something like this. This is probably a 10 by 10 tray. Now, my setup typically consists of a tray with holes in it. So you can see the holes. That's going to allow the water to drain. Then I always have a bottom watering tray with no holes, right? So this tray, when I first start it, this tray will actually sit on top of the microgreens. And then when the microgreens are ready to be introduced into light, I'll move this from the top to the bottom. And then this then becomes my bottom watering tray. So all I do is lift this tray up. I put water in here. And that's how I feed the roots that get through these little holes. And then move this stuff. Okay. And then for my growing medium, what I'm using, I use this, which is just coconut coir. And what's nice about coconut coir is when we first started, I was using peat moss. And peat moss totally works. So if you can't get coconut coir, you can get peat moss. With peat moss, I had to add some rock dust, some limestone, because peat moss is very acidic. So to reduce the acidic nature of the soil, I added some limestone. You could also add like some azomite or glacial rock dust, just any sort of rock dust that might change that acidic nature of peat moss. So when we first started, we were doing peat moss. Then I found a supplier here in the Bay Area, and the supplier had coconut coir. The name of it is COCO Depot, and they're based in Hayward, which is around where we are. So I was able to get a wholesale price on coconut coir because I was buying so much of it. So I then switched to cocoa because cocoa, it's not acidic, it's very neutral, so you don't have to add the limestone to change the pH of the soil. So that's my growing medium. So typically how I start is I will wet. These usually come in a block. So what I'll do is I'll wet it, and then I'll break it all up, break the block up, and then I let it sit and dry out. And then once it's dry, it's ready to go in the tray. Now, different plants like different amounts of soil within the tray. So like peas, for example, you don't have to add as much soil into the tray. But that's the first step, is just add your soil. Now, we've also experimented with growing on pads, coconut coir pads. And if you haven't been on our website, we actually sell coconut coir pads on our website from that same distributor that we're getting the cocoa from. So if you're looking for grow pads, you could do it with pads instead of the actual soil. So all you do is you get your soil on there, okay? Then we're going to want to flatten the soil. And this will flatten out the soil, which then will allow the water to flow evenly on the tray. So if you do water the tray, the seeds you put on the tray are going to be on a flat, even surface. Okay, so then all you do is you take this is just fence board, and it fits perfect in the 1020 tray. So I take this, and I just push it down on the tray. Now this is going to flatten out that surface. So it's flat, ready to go now. Now the next step is you're going to mist your soil. Now I do this even when I'm planting stuff in my garden beds. Before I plant anything, I always wetten the soil. So you're kind of doing the same thing here. You're misting the soil. you're making it a little wet, and then you're going to add the seed. So let's go ahead and mist. And that's it. Now we're going to do peas first. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pasta strainer, which is what I use to strain my stuff. I've got some plants over here, so I'm going to go dump this water that's in here on some of the plants. Okay, so the seeding amount, how much peas per 10-20 tray? So with peas, this is 10 ounces of peas. So I put 10 ounces of peas on one 10-20 tray, and how I put it on the tray is I just spread them like that. And then in a sec here, I'll use my hands and I'll spread them across the tray evenly. And all you're going to do is spread them out, make it nice and even. This is important because if you want to avoid any sort of mold is a big deal with growing microgreens. If these peas are spaced too close together, you could end up getting some mold on your trays, which is fine. Totally acceptable. What I typically do is when I lift my tray to check to make sure that the moisture level is appropriate, what I'll do is if I see any peas that have this white fuzziness to it, I pick them out and I toss them. That way it won't spread. Now, there is times where you think that the mold has gone, but then it pops back up later down the road. And I do the same thing. I just pick it out. So yeah, some people will use like hydrogen peroxide and spray their plants with hydrogen peroxide, but I just feel like that's a toxic thing. So I never spray it with anything toxic, any sort of chemicals or anything like that. I just spray it with water. Okay, so there you go. So the peas are ready. That's what the tray looks like. They're spaced nice and spread out here, so we'll avoid any sort of mold. Now what we do is we take our mister, give it another mist. We already missed it pretty good on that first go round, so this one's going to be a little bit of a lighter mist. And then we take our tray, which looks like this, and we just, no holes, and we just set that over the top of those microgreens. So you're not going to be able to see it. And then what we got to do is we got to get a brick. So hold on one sec. So then we take our brick and we set the brick right on top of the microgreens. Now another method is we could do another tray of peas, and then you can just stack that second tray on top of this tray and do it that way. And the weight from those other trays will put enough pressure down on that bottom tray to hold those peas to the soil. Because the issue is, and why we put this brick down, is when your peas start to establish their roots, you want their roots to grab onto the soil. And if there's no tray or no weight, then a lot of times the peas will germinate, but they won't grab onto the soil, which then those peas turn into nothing and eventually just sit there and mold on your tray. So it's important to have some sort of weight down on the tray to hold those peas to the soil. Now, what I typically do is after every day I'll go in, I'll take this off, I'll pop this open, and I'll look to make sure that the soil is moist. And I do this daily. and I'll check and also see if there's any molded peas. I'll pull those out. And every day you're just going to go in, check if it needs some moisture, give it a little moisture. We're growing with fans in our setup, so the fans typically dry out the trays at a quicker rate, which is what you want. You want the trays to dry out. You want them to dry out because once they dry out, you can water them again. And if they're too moist, then that moisture is just going to create mold. So fans are important. We had a dehumidifier because the humidity in the room was really high. So in order to avoid that high humidity, the dehumidifier would suck the humidity out of the room, and then the room would end up being really dry, which is the growing conditions you want for microgreens. Now, if you're just growing this on your shelf, you grow it in something like this, open a window, put them near a door where you get that airflow going. We were growing them in the garage, so it was perfect because I could open the garage and then the air would come in and all that moisture would go out. But if you don't have a situation like that, just get one of those little dehumidifiers off of Amazon, set it near those microgreens. What I use for my fans is just computer fans, these little computer fans. I'll link all of this stuff in the description below so you can see all the equipment that we're using with our setup. So it doesn't just have to be done indoors like what I'm telling you about. This can also be done outdoors. So I could grow this and then just put it on one of these shelves out here and it would turn into microgreens. Doesn't need to be grown indoors. And outdoors, you actually get a lot more of that nice airflow like you want. So we'll set that over there. Next one we're going to do is yeah, Ashley's asking a question.
How do you tell the difference between mold or just the natural fuzziness?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Good question. So her question was, how do you tell the difference between the mold and the natural fuzziness? Because within the root structure of those microgreens, there'll be a natural whiteness, and it's not mold. Mold is going to be like a fuzzy, like a dark fuzzy color. I mean, you'll be able to see what mold is once you start doing this a lot, but you'll also see some whiteness around the roots. And if you see whiteness on the roots, that's not mold. If you see like a fuzziness on the actual seed itself, that is typically mold. And mold typically occurs when you're not getting enough airflow into your setup, and when you end up getting a lot of moisture. So that's why you really want to control these things. So next, what we're going to do is I'm going to knock out a tray of sunflower here, and we'll talk about that one. But while you guys are on here, ask away, ask questions. If you got questions, ask me questions. I've been doing this for quite some time, so we feel like we've seen it all. My favorite microgreen, the one that I like to eat the most, is either garlic chives. That's one of my favorite, but I also really like broccoli. And what I noticed at the farmers markets is the broccoli sprouts, they were like the most popular. And that was just because there was a trendy thing out there about broccoli seeds and how they have anti-cancer fighting properties. But, we know what causes cancer, right? So if you follow medical medium information, you know this. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you know it. And so broccoli, the reason it's good is it's good for the liver. And what sits in the liver, all these toxic things. So that's why broccoli is good for you. It's good for the liver. All right, next we're going to do the sunflower. So here's my sunflower seeds. They've been soaking for 3 hours. I'm going to just drain them real quick. Okay, so I already flattened this out. You saw me do that. I've got a question here. Let's see if I can read this. Hell yes and no is the person asking it. This is great. I've trays sitting here and totally not used out of fear. Where do you get your microgreens? Do you know when to take off the lid? You may have said this. Yeah, so I get in the beginning I said that I get my microgreens at Mum's, but you could also get them at True Leaf is another place you can get them. I'll link this stuff below. So after this video is over, there'll be a link with the stuff that we talk about. So that's where I would go and get them. Depending on what you're growing will determine how much seed you need to buy. Like this sunflower here, this is 5 ounces of sunflower seed, and that's going to get me 1 tray. With the peas, 10 ounces, that's going to get you 1 tray. So with sunflower and peas, you'll notice those are kind of like, those are very popular one. So you end up buying more of those seeds versus like the broccoli and the fenugreek and the chives and the cilantro and the kohlrabi. You know, you don't need as much seeds on stuff like that. So hopefully that answers your question. And then, do you take off the lid? Yeah, so every day I come in, I pop the lid off, I look at what's going on under the lid. I'll pull out the ones that look like they have some mold growing on them, and then the ones that don't have mold, I'll leave. And most likely it's just the roots. So put the tray back, water if you need water, and put the tray back on. Just continue to do that every day. And you know, you'll be really successful with this stuff. The hardest part is keeping these trays dry. You want the dryness. So definitely want to keep them moist, but don't over moist them, because if you over moist them, then they're going to get mold and they're not going to turn into anything. So there's like a perfect amount, right? Then once the seeds are actually ready to go under the light, right? So the seeds have now sprouted. They're like yay big. They're pushing up on that top tray. Now they're ready to go in the light. So when they go in the light, what I'm typically doing is I'm taking off that top tray and I'm putting the top tray aside. Depending on the crop, I'll even flip the tray. So there's some plants, if you want the stems to get longer, this is a trick. So so let's say the sunflower has grown, they push that tray up, but I want the stems to get longer, right? Because if you have longer stems, you're getting more product. So what I typically do, depending on the crop, right? So you know, depending on the crop, I'll pull it off, and then I'll flip it. So when I flip it, I just do this. I just set this top tray over, and I typically only do this for like 1 day to just get a little extra growth, because when the plants see darkness, they reach for the light, which then makes the stem grow stronger. So usually after I pull the tray off, which is typically around 4 days. So for 4 days, you're taking this tray off, you're checking for mold, and then if it needs moisture, you're misting it. And then you'll do that every day up to 4 days. At day 4, typically you'll see the tray like that's being pushed up. And all you do, flip this for a day. So leave it like that for a day. It'll make them reach for the light. Pull that off, put it under your lights, or put it outside. Put it out wherever you're going to get that light, because they need light to grow. All right, sunflower. So same deal, just put the sunflower seeds on the tray. And I will tell you, with sunflower, it is extra important to know how much seed is going on this tray, because the sunflowers are very susceptible to mold. So they do like it not as moist as some of the other ones. So you really have to keep your eye on these sunflower seeds, because they really do. You really do get a lot of molding, and that's just because a lot of the farmers, what they'll do with the sunflower seeds, almost a guarantee, if you bought some microgreen sunflowers in the store, that they've sprayed them with hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide will prevent the mold from getting out of control, and a lot of commercial growers, that's what they do. Cool. So same process. You moist it before, and then you moist it after. So here's the second spray. So you can see I'm not like sitting here and just trying to soak the tray. I'm trying to just keep it moist, because the moisture is what's going to help these plants germinate. Same deal with this one. Put your tray on, go get a block. I think these are like 15-pound weights, but I just get them at Home Depot. And then when you go to Home Depot, if you find ones that have little chips on them, they'll knock 70% off the total cost of the block. So that's what I do. I just pick the ones that have little dents on it, and that works for me. So sunflower's done. Now we're going to do the last one, which is just the fenugreek. So same process. Put the coconut core down. Now, in between plantings, when you guys are planting and then putting a new crop in, what you want to do is you want to make sure you wash the trays, get all of the excess material off these trays. So typically we'll wash these with a jet setting on the hose before I do a new planting on them, and then I'll sit them in the sun. You don't want any sort of spores to be on the trays in between plantings, because then your next planting is just going to be full of spores and you're going to get a ton of mold. So in between plantings, typically I'll spray all this stuff down. And our biggest problem when we were doing this full time was moisture, controlling the moisture level and preventing mold from occurring. And there were certain crops that just did really poorly when it came to there were certain crops that just did poorly when it came to the molding aspect. Like sunflowers just always had molding problems, and you'd get some good batches and then you get bad batches, and it might not even be your fault. Sometimes you just get bad seed as well. I've gotten bad seed before where I get faulty germination, or the seeds some seeds don't germinate, and when they don't germinate, they create a mold environment. So the seeds that aren't germinating, sometimes those can even create mold. So yeah, don't think it's your fault when you do a couple bad batches. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, I totally just I don't know how to do this. And when we first started, we would have bad batches all the time, and you just kind of learn. You learn what seeds want what. Same deal. Get the moisture going. Fenugreek seeds, they grow on dry, so these aren't being soaked. So the fenugreek, typically I use 1.8 ounces per tray. 1.8 ounces. And then all I do is I just take it in my hand. I spread them out on the tray, because I flatten the soil here, when the seeds spread out on the tray, it has a nice flat, even surface. So you're not going to get those clumps. If you get clumps, the clump is going to allow for a mold sort of situation because the seeds are too close together on the tray. So you really want to space these out evenly and space them out good on the trays. But yeah, fenugreek, not a whole lot of people know about fenugreek, and not a whole lot of people grow it. But we started growing this 2 years ago when we were up at the property, and that was where we started first growing microgreens, and we grew them in a greenhouse. And fenugreek was the most popular one at the market. You had to let people try it, and once they tried it, they were like, "Whoa, this is really good." So it grows. It's a nice smaller one. It has a good taste to it, and you really can. It's nice to go on, like when you're making a sandwich or something. You can put it on a sandwich, which is nice. Where the bigger stuff, I tend to put more on like salads, but we even put them on. We'll make like potato tacos, potato shell tacos, and stuff like that, and we'll put these on the tacos. And yeah, but fenugreek was a good one. That was like a good find, and we actually found it through Medical Medium in his book. He had in there fenugreek as one of the most healing microgreens in Life-Changing Foods, his second book. And he lists it as, I forget what he said in it. You'll have to go read it, but it's in the microgreen chapter. It's fenugreek. And so, yeah, that's an awesome one. So get some fenugreek seeds, try that one. It's really easy to grow. So all I'm doing next is I'm just putting my second. So you can see I'm not really getting this. I'm not hitting this super hard with the mister. It's just a light mist, and it's important because you don't want this stuff to mold on you. Okay, so there's my next tray. Now I've got my 2 trays here. These are the first 2 trays. So typically when I put this on the shelf, I'm stacking them like this. So I've got one on top of the other. Now what will happen is the seeds will eventually grow, and this tray will be lifted up by the seeds. And it makes it easy to pull this stuff out. Now you don't have to do it this way. You could just do single. You don't have to stack at all. You could just do it like this if you wanted to, and just put them on a shelf that way. Really up to you, but I don't stack higher than 2. Some people will stack like 6 of them on top of each other, and I just can't get down with that. So I typically just will single stack or double stack depending on the crop. But yeah, that's how I do my microgreens. So hopefully that gives you some ideas on how you could grow some other crops. If you're not in a situation where you have space in your backyard where you can grow a ton of stuff, then this is a great option. You can use what you have. Sorry, I want to make the YouTube. We'll make sure YouTube's still working here. Yeah, so if you don't have a ton of space, this is a great option because you can grow these on your shelf. You can if you have room in a garage, you could grow them in a garage sort of environment. So really something great anybody can do. You saw how simple it was, me just walking you through this. It's just important to know, how much seed do I use per tray, which I went through with you guys. And then it's important to know how much water to put on these trays. And that's really it. It's like super, super simple. So in 4 days, these trays will be ready. I'll take my main tray, so it'll be like this. I'll flip it upside down, boom, put it in like that, and then I'll bottom water. And the watering just depends on how much moisture the crop needs. So typically I'll do like, a cup and a half. in the tray. And I'll typically do that when the moisture levels have when the tray starts to dry out. So you just go in there, you just check it every day. If it needs a little water, just water it from underneath. You'll notice with fenugreek really doesn't need a whole lot of water, where peas definitely do need a good amount of water. Sunflower's okay with water. But yeah, and then these things will be ready. And typically with the crops, so my peas, 11 days you'll have peas from start to finish. Sunflower, 12 days start to finish. And fenugreek right around the same 10 to 12 days. So what's awesome about these crops is, what's the quickest crop you can grow and feed yourself and feed your family and feed your friends? Well, it's microgreens, right? Radishes typically take 20 to 30 days from seed to harvest, where microgreens are quicker. You can get them in 10 days. So if you're in a situation where you can't get food and there's a food shortage going on and you can't find anything in the grocery stores, get some microgreen seeds and just have them as a backup. So if there is a food shortage, you got seed and you've got soil in your backyard. You don't have to use what I'm using. You could use you don't have to use what I'm using. You could just use soil in your backyard. I mean, there's nothing that's like the best. Any soil is going to work. So get some seeds. That's most important. Get seeds. Just have them handy in case there is a situation where you can't get food. You can grow microgreens and get food in 11 days, 10 days. So really important. What's the bottom watering in tray? Okay, the bottom watering tray is like this. So there's no holes. It's a 10-20 tray, same size as the other tray, and just no holes. So when you put the tray down, you'll water it in here, and then the tray that we just did has holes in it. So when you put this down and you put this in it, now what's going to happen is those roots are going to come through these little holes. And as the roots come through these little holes, they're going to be searching for water because they're hungry, right? So, or thirsty. So what you're going to do is you're going to put them in this bottom tray. Remember, this tray was sitting on top of those greens. So we just did these greens. The bottom tray, watering tray, is on top. And then what you do is, after you pull it off the top tray, you then stick it underneath and you put the water on this tray. And you could just, what I usually do is I'll get a measuring cup and I'll measure it out. So depending on how much it needs, it could be a cup, could be a cup and a half, could be 2 cups, it depends on the crop. So what I would do is just keep an eye on it, and the bottom watering tray, water in there, put a cup in to start, and see if it moistens all of the soil. If it doesn't moisten all the soil, go a cup and a half. It really is just going to depend on your setup. Now, what's important is you put the tray on a level surface. I did this when I first started, where I had these racks behind me set up, and the back end of the rack wasn't the same angle as the front end. So when I poured the water in the bottom watering tray, this half of the soil would be moist, but the back half wouldn't, because it was at an angle, right? So make sure that wherever you set this, that it's an even surface, because you want that water to spread evenly. But so yeah, that's the bottom watering tray. And where I get these trays, there's a bunch of places to get them out there. If I just, I bought so many of these trays, but if I was to redo this and get more trays, I'd probably get them from the Urban Farmer. It's called Paper Pot Co. And he does, he's an urban farmer like myself, and he has great trays. I don't know if I have any behind me to show you. Hold on. Yeah, I do. I'll grab one. All right, so these are the other trays. So holes, and then they also make a bottom watering tray for this too. But this is the Paper Pot Co. I'll put a link below, but this is the tray I like. It's very, very heavy duty, and it's bigger. It's bigger than this other tray. So here's your, see the difference? So it's wider. It's wider and it's longer. So you're going to get more product per tray, which is an important thing, right? If you're trying to feed yourself or a family, you want to go with something that's going to get you the most. So I use these trays. You get more holes on this tray, so you're going to have to check the moisture more on something like this because you're getting more airflow. But yeah, those are the two trays. This one I get at Bootstrap Farmer, this 1020 tray. So you can get a bunch of these at Bootstrap, or you can get them from Paper Pot Co., which is Curtis Stone, the urban farmer. And Diego is his business partner, who also has a YouTube channel. So yeah, I think that's it. You know, I'll continue to do these other trays off live, but I just thought I'd give you just a quick overview on how this is all done, so you guys can start growing them yourself. Any questions? You know, go ahead and just put them in the chat. Would you do? So someone, Barbie on YouTube, was asking, would you do any harm if you ate some with mold? Well, you're not eating the mold. Typically occurs in the soil, and a trick of the trade here is if you do get some mold on some of the seeds after the seeds have sprouted, right? If all of a sudden you see some mold down there, take some, just take a little of the coconut coir and sprinkle it where that mold is. And a lot of times that will just take care of the problem right then and there. You're covering the mold. Now the mold is not exposed. Now it's not a problem. And most of the time you're not eating the mold because the mold actually occurs on the seed in the soil. And you can pick those things out even after the crop is grown. So the crop could be 6 inches tall and you might see a little mold. You could take some tweezers, pull the mold out, or you can take your hand and just pull them out that way too. So mold is not something that we should fear necessarily. It's fearful if the spores get all over the place, which with this you're covering the spores up by dropping a little coconut coir over the spot. So and if you're growing this the way I'm explaining, then mold should not be a problem. It's only when there's too much moisture on the tray. If there's more moisture and you don't have any airflow going to dry these trays out, then mold occurs. Mold likes a lot of moisture and it likes a lot of humidity. So if you reduce the humidity and get rid of the moisture, don't water your trays, don't soak them as much, you'll learn. So every tray you do, you'll learn a little bit from each tray. So that first tray you might mold out, don't get discouraged. Just know the next one, don't soak the tray as much. Check your airflow. If you're growing it in a kitchen, maybe you need to open the door or open a window and get some airflow going in there. Or maybe you need to buy little fans that you can set on your countertop so that they they blow at those microgreens. So that's the fix. But when you see mold, don't freak out. Just pick those little mold pieces out, and that's why you're checking these every day, because every day you want to check it and you want to check for things like this. So yeah, it's not like the mold that you hear Anthony talk about, like the mold in your house and stuff like that. This is not the same sort of mold. Yeah, okay. And Ashley said that in the Instagram chat, that food mold isn't harmful like black mold, and that's something we heard Anthony talk about. So nothing to worry about there. All right, cool. So I think that's it with the microgreens. So if you have more questions after this live, you can reach out to me and Ashley, and we can help walk you through this process. I also do garden coaching, so you could check out our website. We list kind of the services and all the expertise that we have, and you can sign up for a half hour or an hour with me, one-on-one. We'll do like a Zoom or a live, so you can kind of show me your setup, and I can answer any sort of questions that you might have about how you're doing things. Yeah, so that's an option too. Go on our website, check out the garden coaching tab, and I list everything. It's all on a sliding scale, and even the sliding scale is negotiable, because I really want to make this affordable for people. And this is why I'm giving out all this free information, because I want to encourage you guys to grow more food. If what happens if Anthony is speaking the truth, and if the truth is going to turn into what he says it's going to be, we might have a problem with food. So it's important to learn how to grow your own food, so you're not reliant on the stores. And big ag is trying to control the marketplace. So these chemical farms and these GMO farms are going to become more and more of a thing. They're going to say, well, you can't get food here, you can't get food there. So the best you're going to get is this GMO stuff, and that's stuff's no good. We don't want that in our bodies, right?
There was some more questions.
Rocky Mountain Mama, yeah, we're talking about Anthony William. He's done some lives talking about food shortages and talking about how to prepare for these shortages. So we even starting to hear it on mainstream media about the food shortages and whatnot. So even without the food shortages, you should be growing your own food, because it's healthier for you. So yeah. All right, Ashley, there's some questions.
There more questions.
Okay, which ones did I miss?
Do they need to put the stone on it? Can they grow without the stone?
Oh, the stone. So do you need to put the stone on it, or can you grow without the stone? You have to cover the tray, but you can grow without the stone. So it's not a big deal. You could even use bricks. If you got some bricks, or you can put rocks on it, something like that. It's just a big deal to put the weight on it, because if you have the weight on it, then when the seeds take root, they're going to root right into the soil. If you don't have the weight on it, then when the seeds germinate, not all of those seeds are going to actually grab onto the soil. If they don't grab onto the soil, they turn into nothing. They have nothing to grab onto. If they have nothing to grab onto, then they're going to turn into nothing, and it's just wasted seed on the tray. And sometimes when that seed doesn't grip on and it just sits on the tray, you end up getting mold on those seeds. So the weight thing is a good thing to have. I mean, we tried it both ways, and the weight thing is the way to go. Just take it off once the plants have set roots. So I say leave it like this for 4 days, but if the plants take root after 2 days, you could pull this off and then just leave the top tray on by itself. So.
And how long do seeds last? Was another question.
Seeds, yeah, seeds last. as long as you keep them in a cool environment and don't expose them to a lot of heat or sunlight, seeds will last a long time. I had a problem this year with some of my seeds because I had them in where we were growing microgreens, and that room was getting very humid, and the humidity, the heat wasn't good for the seeds. So then I tried to germinate a bunch of those seeds, and they went bad. But there's seed banks in Antarctica. There's seed banks out there, and that's where they store a lot of these seeds because they're in a cool environment. So if you're going to store seeds, find the room in your house, maybe a room that goes like a basement or something, because the basement is always typically cooler because it's at ground level. Once you dig down so many feet in the soil, the steady temperature is typically like 56 degrees. So keep them in a cool environment, and they should last you a long time. I've still got seed that I germinated this year from 5 years ago, and it did fine. Is there anything else?
Someone just clarifying, so put water on the bottom tray.
Yeah, I got that one.
Water on the bottom tray, and then where do you get the bricks? I know you said that earlier.
Oh, bricks, Home Depot, Lowe's, your hardware box store, Ace Hardware might have it.
And then someone said, what is the website? I think that's what you were talking about.
Oh, website
Anthony?
is what?
I think it was when you were talking about Anthony. The question came here.
Oh, about Anthony's website?
I don't know. It was when you were talking about.
Well, I'll link all the stuff I talked about in the video below. So
YouTube, Instagram, I can link it. I'll figure out how to link it.
If Ashley can't link it in Instagram, go to YouTube, and I'll link everything in the YouTube video. So you guys will have like where to get these trays. I'll even link my setup for my indoor grow setup, all my fans, my humidifiers, my racks, all that stuff. So you'll be able to get whatever you need to start doing this. And then I got some questions here that came up this week. So on Instagram, what we've been doing is we throw out on our story that we're going to be doing these lives and to just ask questions. So these were some questions that came up this week. They're not really about microgreens, but I think people can relate to them. So the first question, I think this was an awesome question. I can't even ask questions because I don't know how to start, right? So that's like where I was when I first got into gardening. Like I remember going to the nursery, putting some broccoli in the ground, and when that broccoli went to head, we were just amazed because we had never seen how broccoli grew. We were like, whoa, that's how broccoli grows? So that's where I was when I first started doing this. I didn't really know much of anything. And over time, you learn. And every year you grow something and it doesn't work out, and you learn how to do it different. Or you deal with some insect, or you get some powdery mildew, and you're like, well, how can I do that different next year? So I think every year you learn from your mistakes, and you get better at this. And it's important to know how to do this stuff, especially if you're living the medical medium lifestyle. You're eating what you should be growing. And if you knew how to grow it, you'd be eating your own food. And if you're eating your own food, that food would be made for you because, like Anthony says, when you're out there taking care of these plants, they get to know you, and they put the minerals and the vitamins in those plants that they know is going to go towards healing you. So I don't even know how to ask questions. I don't even know how to start. Start by just going to the nursery or getting some seeds and putting some seeds in the ground and keeping that spot nice and moist. Watch all the videos I've put out on that gardening channel already. Those kind of like, it's a beginner's guide to gardening. So I show you how to make your own soil. I show you how to make soil blocks. Now, if you don't want to do your own soil and get soil blocks and all that stuff, that's fine. Just go to the nursery, get a plant, put it in the ground, get some pots, some grow bags, put some soil in there, and just see what comes of it. And you'll learn every year, and I'm here to help. So you can always ask me questions if you can't figure stuff out. And by you guys asking these questions, you're kind of giving me ideas for the videos I need to put out. So always ask me questions. Always ask us questions, because that tells us what people want to hear and gives us ideas for videos. Next question was, is big spinach still as beneficial as baby spinach? So two different things, right? Two different. There's a question. I'll answer that after I answer this one. So there's two types of crops, right? There's baby crops, and then there's full grown crops, right? What's the difference? Is baby spinach more beneficial than regular spinach? My answer to that is baby spinach isn't technically fully grown, right? Where big spinach is fully grown. So something that is bigger has had the opportunity to bring up more minerals, more vitamins, right? And when a crop is growing, it needs the minerals, it needs the vitamins in the soil to grow. It uptakes those minerals and those vitamins through the soil, and then it distributes them in the leaves, right? So in spinach's example, it's bringing that stuff up, it's going to the leaves. Now, if you eat spinach at a bigger size, it's bringing in more of those minerals, more of the vitamins. Where if you grow something in a baby form, you're not going to get all those minerals, all the vitamins. You're still going to get a lot. So it's, to me, it's not as big of a deal. But if you want to look at it from like a mineral perspective and vitamin perspective, you're getting more from the stuff you let that grows out longer. I mean, we've heard Anthony talk about, do you eat a cherry when the cherry is white or yellow, or do you eat the cherry when it's deep and dark and red, right? Because that cherry is not fully grown until it's fully red, and that's how you know that it's ready to be eaten. So yeah, but I grow baby spinach, I grow baby kale, I grow baby arugula, I grow baby mustard, I grow all my stuff I sell is baby, because I can plant it really close together, and I can get a lot more product from closer spacing than what I could if I spaced it out further apart. And the other benefit there is you're protecting the soil, because as the plants grow, it creates this canopy over the soil, which then protects the soil. So that canopy is created. The leaves now are touching each other, which leaves no room underneath for weeds to grow. It leaves no soil unprotected. And we want to protect that soil to keep the life that lives under the soil doing its thing, because that's ultimately what is helping the plants produce more. And then I had a question on here. I think it was about Colorado. What if you live in Colorado? I feel like nothing grows here. Well, a ton of stuff grows everywhere, so you just have to find the crops that grow well in your region. If you're referring to like the short growing season, we had a short growing season when we grew up near Oregon. We would typically, you wouldn't even put your tomatoes in the ground until May, because you were getting so much rain and the weather was still really cold. So people grow food all over the place. People grow food all the way up in Canada, so just because you have a short growing season doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to turn into anything, right? What you would do in a situation like that where you have the cold, find a way to start your crops sooner, right? So even though it's cold outside, you could be getting a head start maybe in a greenhouse, or maybe that greenhouse is heated, or maybe you can grow stuff inside under grow lights, under heat pads until it's ready to go in the ground. And that's how you could get your head start in the season. So if your season is very short, you can still grow stuff. Just try to get a head start at it. Um, yeah, and it was sucky because when we were up north, we definitely didn't get full crops of stuff. Like here, we're getting like fruit after tomato set after tomato set after tomato set. Up there, we'd only get maybe 4 or 5 sets of tomatoes before it got cold, and then everything frosted. So you can grow stuff in these really cold areas. You just have to be strategic about how you do it. Um, yeah. Yeah. Living in Boston. Yeah, Boston is quite cold, but you know what? Uh, there's a farm. There's a farm that I learned a lot of this stuff from, and they're located up in Maine. And it's called the book is called The New Organic Grower. It's by Elliot Coleman. I read that when I first got into gardening, and that was the book that kind of helped me learn a lot about how to do these things. And then I read another book from a farmer up in Quebec, which is actually further up north. And his name is J.M. Fortier, and he wrote the New Organic Market Garden book. And so it was like, well, it's called The Market Gardener, but and he's got a YouTube station, and he'll teach you some stuff on there as well. But yeah, he's up in Quebec, and he does peppers and grows ginger and grows tomatoes and eggplant and all these crops that normally you wouldn't see people grow in Quebec. And he's making a killing because he'll go to the farmer's market with stuff that people can't show up to the market growing. So he'll be the first one there with tomatoes. He'll be the first one there with cucumbers and eggplant and peppers and ginger and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, you can grow in these cold areas. You just have to be really strategic about how you do it. Okay, let's look at some other ones. Yeah, you can grow inside microgreens on a sunlit window. Totally. And yeah, some scary times right now, Rocky Mountain Mama. But being able to grow your own food, that's going to be more important than ever in the future. Um, you just look at like all this farmland that Bill Gates has bought, and then it's just you can see what's on the horizon, that they're planning big things with these farms. And we know he's behind a lot of the GMO stuff. So the way I look at it is there's going to be a lot of GMO farms, and that's why it's important for us to all learn how to grow our own food, so we know what's in our food, right? Okay, and then tips on growing. Oh, okay. Do you need to replace everything each time you harvest? So that question to me means, if you cut something once, do you get another cutting off it, or do you have to start back over? Right. So with a lot of my greens, I'll get multiple cuttings. So I'll cut once, and then it'll grow back. I'll cut again, it'll grow back. I'll cut again. You can get up to 4 cuttings off of lettuce. And if you pick the outer leaves of the lettuce rather than just cutting it at the top, I won't stress the plant out. So you'll actually end up getting more from that lettuce plant by doing it that way. And this applies with all greens. Pick the outer leaves rather than just cutting at the top. But yeah, all my greens I get multiple cuttings off of. Tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. You'll get multiple stuff off that. The only ones you won't is like your root crops, like carrots. You pick a carrot, the carrot's not going to come back. You pick a radish, that radish isn't going to come back. If you pick turnips, that turnip's not going to come back. But what you can do with radishes and turnips is you can pick the leaves, right? Radishes are the healthiest leafy green on the planet. So you can pick the leaves of the radish. It's not going to affect the growth of the radish. The radish will just continue to grow and continue to produce leaves. And then when you're done picking those leaves and the radish is big enough, just pull the radish out and eat the radish. Do that with turnips too. Carrots, I don't do that with carrots, but turnips. Turnips have good leaves. They're like a mustard green leaf. All right, tips on growing aloe plants. So aloe vera, right? So aloe is really easy to grow. It just likes very drained soil. So it doesn't like a lot of wetness. It likes the soil to be very well drained. We've grown a lot of aloe over the years, and we always put it in a spot that has good drained soil. Now you can make your own good drained soil, and all you do for that is sand. Sand is I've talked about sand. Sand is really important in everybody's garden mixes. It's got the silica in it, which is going to harness energy that surrounds us here on this earth. So get some sand. Get some. You're not going to want to put COCO coir, a lot of COCO coir or peat moss in, because that is going to hold on to water. You want the water to drain. So just, mix some sand in with some clay soil, some soil on your land, and that would just be perfect for the aloe. It really doesn't need a whole lot. Just the sand, and the sand will break up the clay, so it'll turn that soil into a nice little mixture. And that's how I would grow aloe. And then as aloe grows, you can just pick the leaves off one by one and use them as you please. You can eat them. Even eat them. We eat a lot of aloe. Cool. Well, I think that's it for the questions. So if you guys don't have any more questions for me, I hope you enjoyed this one. You now know how to grow microgreens, which is awesome. I've been very excited to do this video for a long time. I feel like we always get questions from people asking how to grow microgreens, and I've just never had the opportunity to someone is asking another question. How and when to grow? I'm having a hard time reading that last word. Is that coriander? If that's coriander, that's cilantro. We call it cilantro, but so yeah, with cilantro, it's an important one because we put it in our heavy metal detox smoothie, right? So with cilantro, you just want to keep it in a red colored turnip, like a veg. Huh. Well, we grew red turnips this year. I'm not sure of the plant that you're talking about, but we've grown turnips. We love turnips. We grow a lot of them, and they're very easy to grow. They actually do okay in the sun. In the winter time here, we don't grow them, but during the summer, we grow a lot of them. People really like the greens, the mustard greens on them. But they're super easy to grow. You can direct seed them. You don't have to buy them. You don't have to start them from seed and then watch them grow. Just direct seed them directly into the soil and just keep the soil moist, and they'll pop up. And that applies with a lot of root crops like radishes, carrots, all that stuff. I typically question. I'll find the English name for this. Okay. Well, you let me know what it is, and I'm certain I can probably help you figure out how to grow it. But yeah. So, anyways, what I was just saying is I've been excited to share this video with you guys because microgreens are really important to grow. They're very easy to grow, and you saw how easy it was here. Me just kind of walking you through it. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, because this week what I plan on doing is showing you my grow setup. So I'll show you the fans, I'll show you the lights, I'll show you the racks I use, I'll show you how I do everything indoors. And then outdoors is pretty simple. You just put them on a shelf after following this process, and there you go. So, but inside, a little more trickier, nicer because you can control the environment. Beetroot. Okay, beetroot. Yeah, yeah. We've grown beets, but you know what? I stay away from beets just because I know a lot of beets are GMO, and but beetroot, yeah, we grew beets up at the farm because we would sell the beets to at the farmers market. People loved them, so I've grown a lot of them, and they grow very similar to a lot of the root crops. I don't direct seed beetroots. I start beetroots in soil blocks, and then I transfer them into the garden once they're ready. But leaves, beetroot leaves, people love those. So we would actually use the leaves of the beetroot and put that in some of our salad mixes. We had a braising mix, a cooking mix, and we would use that in. We had beetroot, and we would use the leaves in our salad mixes. But beetroot's very easy. Start them in a transplant, transfer them into the garden. In about 60 days, you'll start to get beets. As far as like spacing on the beetroots, you could space those beetroots out. I grow on a 30-inch bed. So typically I would have like 3 to 6 beets, depending on how big you want the beets to get. If you want them really big, space them like 3 in a 30-inch bed. So whatever that is, whatever spacing is on that, like 9 inches apart, something like that, and then just space them in a row. So beets, they'll grow into, if you want them spaced like that, they'll get very big. You can space them 6 inches apart and they'll be small. We spaced them 6 inches apart because we were growing, trying to grow as much food as we could. So yeah, but beetroot, that's something you can do. My favorite beet is it's called the Badger beet. It's an orange beet. You can get it from a place I'll link it below, but a place up in New York or something like that is where I got it. But it's an orange beet. It's called Badger beet. You can look it up. I'm sure you can find it. And that's what we grew, and it was a favorite at the market. People loved it. But yeah, so all right, so that's it. I'm gonna wrap this up because it's getting late and I gotta do some stuff before night falls. So hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll be back next week. I haven't decided what I'm going to talk about next week, but we'll put something together. Stay tuned this week on our Instagram. We will share on our stories more about our microgreen setup, our lights, our fans, our humidifier, all that stuff. So we'll see you guys. Have a good night. I'll see you next Friday. Bye.